I used to fly a Canadian flag. I used to be proud of my heritage. My family came to Canada in 1660, and I believe in the freedoms that Canada used to stand for.
Yeah.
But they no longer exist. Alberta still has those values, and it still is worth fighting for.
I remember hanging up the the Canada flag at our school in 1965. Now I look at that flag and I ask myself, what color is it? Well, it's red and white. What color is the Liberal Party? Red and white. How many maple trees do you see out west? Western Canadians carried that flag to Ottawa, and what did they do? They beat us up, they put us in jail, they called us names, they froze our bank accounts, and they want us to continue carrying our flag?
Alberta still has those values, but the rest of Canada doesn't.
I don't believe they actually fought for a flag.
No.
They fought for freedom. A guy threw a chair through my window at home. My daughter and her kids were there visiting. This guy came, picked up a chair that I had sitting outside, threw my window, walked into my house, and was screaming his head off, scared the shit out of my 6-year-old grandson.
The language that they use, the word that they use is traitor, and that carries some serious implications, because if you're a traitor, we're implying that we're gonna hang you or shoot you.
Yeah.
The media and the politicians, they're the ones pushing this, and then the lowlifes, on the bottom, they take it literally. They might say, what freedoms do you think you don't have right now?
Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, Bill C9 coming out and taking away freedom of speech. Our private, legally purchased properties being confiscated, our guns. They want a carbon tax our animals, which makes us not be able to own animals, own legal property. I'm only 19, so that's why I feel like it's worth fighting for, because I'm a whole life ahead of me.
The first clause in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms gives the government the right to take away all our other rights if they just decide. Those rights that the Americans have shall not be infringed.
Yeah.
We don't have similar language in Canada, but we could in Alberta if we become independent.
In every totalitarian system, the first thing you do is disarm the people.
We used to be a high trust society here. I don't feel like that's happening anymore. We trust people to own guns. You're responsible. We just have a culture of responsibility. So now they're taking the guns away because they're saying all this crime's happening, but it's like, it's not us. Like, the culture's changing. My message to gun owners, if you want to keep your guns, there's only one way. It's hard to get into the forever Canadian's mind too. Right? Whenever I encounter one, I feel like they're shocked at my mere existence. Like, how is it possible that someone who disagrees with me exists in this world?
Nobody cares if we vote or not.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, well, this will be the first time in Alberta's history, in Canada's history, when an Albertan's vote counted for something.
Democracies are what they throw around to keep people happy.
The referendum and our option to leave Canada is kind of the last semblance of democracy that we have. She could just say, hey, you got a majority for this referendum, but actually I'm not gonna do anything about it.
Right? She's done that with the Alberta pension plan.
Yeah.
She's done that with the Alberta police force.
All of these little issues that we talk about, they're huge issues. Pipelines and all these are corruption in the government, Carney's $250 butter. Really, the issue is freedom. This is the problem I have with Ottawa, is they're 3,000 some kilometers away from us, and they're completely different from us. There's like 6 different regions in between. They don't represent us. They don't have the same values and dreams and perspective on the world or the same culture. And because of that, they try to impose their views on us. Hey guys, I'm John. Welcome back to my channel. I am here at Paul's Pizza in Airdrie with my big blue beautiful flag showing my support for Alberta independence. Yeah. And I got a couple of friends with us. We got Wade and Daniel. How's it going, guys?
Going good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It was a great day.
Awesome. So we're gonna walk around and talk in the parking lot and flag in some people, and these two gentlemen have a really interesting story that you want to hear, so stick around. So let's walk around.
Okay.
All right. So we already met a few times, but
Yeah, it's been a few times, yeah.
yeah. Well, so tell me, what got you interested in independence? What's your story?
Well, I've always been conservative, pro-freedom, my whole life. I was recently, this last election especially, that made me, very pro-independence.
Yeah.
Because I saw that Canada, honestly, it's hopeless. Quite frankly, it's sad, but given the way the East continues to vote, even with Alberta's votes, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So I would say, I've always been a conservative. Yeah, I've seen, like, I lived in Brazil for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I've seen the dangers of communism, socialism, and what it does down the road.
Yeah.
My family was persecuted politically down there because of our beliefs. And I would say, now seeing what the liberals are doing is exactly what the communists down there were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so... Yeah.
See, that's an interesting story. I want to hear more about being in Brazil and all that. But first, I want to hear from Wade, too. So you said that this is a conservative, you've been conservative, you focus on that. But I'm more like, I don't think that this is a conservative per se movement, but...
Traditional values. I've always been like have traditional values. I've always been pro-freedom. I don't actually stick to a political party, but I'm pro-freedom. I just want to live life, not have to have my freedom taken away.
Like conserve our culture.
Exactly.
That's what happens when you do live for videos outside. It's like, we want to conserve our culture and our heritage, right? And so, that's why I like coming out to outside places, because you get the random interactions from people, and we're kind of flagging the traffic. So,
You betcha.
let's keep walking. But Wade, you think like this movement's about conserving our culture and our heritage, and like
Standing on our own 2 feet and carrying our own stuff in this life.
yeah,
And, we don't need to be regulated by people that live 3,000, 4,000 miles away.
yeah,
And I actually, in the early 80s, I was living in Hinton. I was a Red Seal welder.
yeah,
And Pierre Elliott Trudeau introduced the national energy policy. I was in my early 20s and wasn't paying attention. I just knew I needed to find a job.
yeah,
So I got a job working up in Tumbler Ridge at a coal mine. And I bought a little wee holiday trailer.
yeah,
And I towed it out by the Murray River. And I lived in the bush until about the middle of December, when we finally sold our house in Hinton. And then I moved my wife and our son up to Tumbler Ridge.
yeah.
And it
Wow,
wasn't
Tumbler
until
Ridge.
years later that I discovered what actually happened, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I can see it happening again, only it's worse this time. And my grandchildren need to live in a free country, and they need to have the ability to prosper.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring this up, because like we kind of represent 3 generations here. Like I'm kind of in the middle.
Hey.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I'm 19, and then yes.
I'm 40.
I'm 67.
You're like 37.
That's like the exact same distance. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we represent 3 generations of Albertans, and we got different stories, but the hopes and the dreams are the same.
Absolutely.
Freedom.
Exactly.
You bet.
And that's how I feel. It's like I used to fly a Canadian flag. I used to be proud of my heritage. My family came to Canada in 1660.
Yeah.
So we fought in all the wars. We built this country, and I believe in the freedoms that Canada used to stand for.
Yeah.
But they no longer exist. They're gone in Canada. Alberta still has those values, and it still is worth fighting for. But the rest of Canada, sadly, no longer has it. It's no longer existent.
Yeah, I don't know what it even means to be Canadian. Like after Trudeau says this is a post-national state, it's like anybody can just come here and become Canadian. It doesn't mean anything to be Canadian anymore,
Exactly.
right? It's just like a passport. That's the only thing we share in common with these guys.
That we give to people
right.
after a year.
Yeah,
I remember hanging up that Alberta or the Canada flag at our school in 1965, not thinking too much about it. Now I look at that flag and I ask myself, what color is it? Well, it's red and white. What color is the Liberal Party? Red and white.
I make the same association.
And how many maple trees do you see out west?
Yeah, none. That doesn't grow here.
So that flag really doesn't represent Canada. It represents the Laurentian elite.
Yeah. Well, it's like when they were making that symbol, they're like, let's have a Canadian flag with a maple leaf. The people in Ottawa, the Laurentian elite, they looked around and they're like, what symbolizes everything that we see? everything that represents our ideas. And you know, from their perspective, like that makes sense, right? Except that it doesn't represent anything on Canada other than that little tiny geographical area by the Toronto to Ottawa to Montreal.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, we are different, and they want to just lasso us in. You know, my sister, she lives in Ontario. I told her, I'm like, Albertans have unique culture, unique heritage. We want to preserve it. That's what independence is about. And she's like, no, you guys are just like us. And I'm like, they just want to force it.
I would strongly disagree with that. Like, I've lived in Ontario, I lived in BC, and as soon as me and my brother came to Alberta, we told her, like, this is different. Like, the whole culture, that sense of freedom, it's like a different country.
Yeah.
And that's when you have the second biggest country in the world, it will not all be the same. You'll have places, and it never will work out. Yeah. When you have such huge countries, they eventually fall apart because everyone has their own culture. Quebec has its own, Ontario has its own, Alberta has its own, BC has its own. Like, yeah, we can't.
Yeah. Well, I've come to the conclusion that Canada is too big to be effectively governed. There's different groups with different needs, and you know, God bless them. Everybody can have their own dreams and hopes for the future and preserve their culture, but we're too different. If you make one group of us happy, like Quebec, you piss off Alberta, and it's that's just the two biggest groups. But like, every little region is so different to just be looped into one. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also, Western Canadians carried that flag to Ottawa, and what did they do?
Yeah.
They beat us up, they put us in jail, they called us names, they froze our bank accounts. They still want to put Tamara Leach and Chris Barber in jail.
Yeah.
And they want us to continue carrying their flag?
Yeah.
How arrogant can you get?
Yeah. We carried that flag, and you know what? That whole trucker convoy was actually about unity too. Absolutely. I know some of the leaders in that movement, and they were all about unity, right? And then that's how we got treated by Canada. So we don't want to be part of this. We're not part of this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, it is in some ways. Like, when you actually about it, it is sad in some ways because, like, my grandparents, they fought under the Canadian flag. Or the Maple Leaf, not the Canadian flag, in World War II, in World War I, the Korean War. We fought in all these wars. We built this country to what it was. And we always flew a Canadian flag. But it's just seeing where Canada has gone. It's not the Canada we built. It's not the Canada we knew. Yeah. Alberta still has those values, but the rest of Canada doesn't. Yeah. And it's nothing like what the Canada we knew and what we built.
I don't believe they actually fought for a flag.
No.
They fought for freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wouldn't have mattered, from these people, it wouldn't have mattered what country they lived in. They would have went and fought for their freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and one point I'll make, though, is like during World War II, we had a different flag, right? And you had that flag actually for last time I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my brother.
Red ensign.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know, but okay, look, the symbols change. But I don't think people fought for a flag. They fought for freedom. Absolutely. That's right.
Well, what I mean is what it used to represent. Like, now the Canadian flag literally represents tyranny, the liberal, like it's, and just complete like totalitarian oppression is what it represents now. It never used to, but that's what it has become.
Yeah.
And I find it really strange that now you fly an Alberta flag in Alberta and other Albertans are giving you the finger.
Yeah, well, like, you guys have been watching closer than I have. Have you gotten have you seen any reactions from the public?
Faces, but several people also thumbs up.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had a guy throw a chair through my window at home. And
tell us that story.
Well, actually, I was at the leaders' dinner in Red Deer, and my daughter and her kids were there visiting, spending the night.
Yeah.
And my wife was home, and I got home from the dinner, and there's a chair hanging out my window, and glass all over. Jeez. Well, apparently this guy came, picked up a chair that I had sitting outside, through my window, walked into my house, and was screaming his head off. Scared the shit out of my 6-year-old grandson.
Oh, crap.
And my daughter, and the 2-year-old was upstairs. She was just about getting put to sleep when all this happened.
Yeah.
And so my daughter came barreling down the stairs, and she told my grandson to get upstairs. And after it was done, he came back down and he told his mom and grandma that he was scared to cry in case that guy hurt him.
Yeah,
that's
traumatizing.
Court on the 27th of this month.
Yeah.
I'm going to court again in Red Deer for see what's going to happen to this guy.
Yeah. Well, and I hear so much about violence and incidences. My previous video is I interviewed the guy from Cool Shit Wholesale in Red Deer.
Oh yeah.
They smashed his windows, right? Yeah. Forever Canada.
Yeah.
You know, It's like, here's the thing. The language that they use, the word that they use is traitor, and that carries some serious implications. Because if you're a traitor, we're implying that we're going to hang you or shoot you, right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, the media and the politicians, they're the ones pushing this, and then the lowlifes, on the bottom, they take it literally, And so,
absolutely.
Well, and if you actually look, like people always try to call it, like people say, oh, you're, racist, violent, whatever. I've never done anything racist, never done anything violent. They're the ones who are always throwing windows, swearing at us. I've never sworn at anybody, but I've had it done to me so many times. And if you think about it, like, literally all we want is freedom. Like, I'm not don't be offensive to anyone. I'm like, all I want is to be able to raise a family, get married, have kids, buy land without my freedoms being oppressed, and just be able to live in freedom. And that's really all that it's about, is if Canada pose that. So right now we want that freedom. Yeah. And people, somebody else wants that freedom too. Yeah. No, and that's just about violence. It's like they always try to call us out on it. But it's like, when's the last time we did anything like that?
Okay, so let me ask you a hard question, because I like to kind of push back on my videos. All right, I imagine that a forever Canadian watching this, they might say, what freedoms do you think you don't have right now? Like, what's freedom taken away from you?
A bunch. Yeah. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Well, I can give you examples. COVID, we have pastors being imprisoned. Freedom of speech, Bill C-9 coming out and taking away freedom of speech. Our private, legally purchased properties being confiscated, our guns. They want a carbon tax, our animals, which makes us not be able to own animals, own legal property. Like, there's a lot, and just there's been a lot. Like, I'm only 19, so that's why I feel like it's worth fighting for, because I'm a whole life ahead of me, and if I'm gonna live through this, it's like, I can't, like, down the road, you look where this is all going, it's just gonna get worse. Yeah. Every bill they pass, they're like, okay, now parts of the Bible, I'm not protected. Like, it used to be freedom of religion. I could say the Bible and it would be fine. Now, you could risk jail time, fines for just quoting parts of the Bible. This was built as a Christian country, but now they're banning parts of the Bible. Yeah. And that's a huge thing. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Right now, if I say anything about gay, woke, anything, I could go to jail. I could be fined. I know people who've been, and there's freedom of speech is gone. Our freedom, Susie. So overall, a lot of our freedoms are being eroded.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you bring this up, because the first clause in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms gives the government the right to take away all our other rights if they just decide. The decision is made by a politician. They're like, okay, well, in a free and democratic society, this shouldn't be allowed. And that's the excuse they always say. And then they just take away whatever they want. And so that's how, but the American system, it's not the best. It could be better, but it is the best in the world. Those rights that the Americans have shall not be infringed. Yeah. We don't have similar language in Canada, but we could in Alberta if we become independent.
It wouldn't matter what the language is. It's obvious that the Liberals will do whatever the hell they want, whenever they want, as much as they want, and there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it.
And no one holds them accountable. Like the
no accountability.
Shooting Rebel News journalists with tear gas, they shot rubber bullets, trampled people with horses. Yeah. And then no one holds them accountable. Yeah. And that's the point it's got to, where people peaceful protesting. So there's another point about our freedom being taken away. That's another great example. People go peacefully protesting, and look how they're met. That's communist style tactics.
Okay, well, this is a good point for you to tell us your backstory, because you said you came from Brazil, or you lived in Brazil for 5 years, and you know all about peaceful protesting and how that gets treated down there, eh?
Yeah.
Under Lula.
Yeah.
President Lula.
So I'll start from the beginning, because so my family went to Brazil in 2020 during the COVID lockdowns, because, well, this is simple. Lockdowns, we didn't want to be part of it. So we went to Brazil. And we just started farming down there very peacefully. It's a family of 10 kids, so we're all homeschooled, unvaccinated. And really, even us going out, the whole point was to have our freedom. But we weren't doing anything. We just want to live on our farm, want to raise the kids, and that's it. Yeah. And when we went down there, Bolsonaro was the president. Now, he may have had his flaws, but I personally really like him. He made homeschooling legal. freedom of speech, what was allowed, which I'll get to right now, that's freaking practically non-existent. And just, there's a lot of things he was doing that were making Brazil much freer of a country.
So, but your family left Canada deliberately to go to Brazil because you saw already the writing on the wall back then, our freedom was being taken away.
Yep, and a huge thing of it was Bolsonaro was not enforcing vaccine passports. So Bolsonaro was not enforcing any of the vaccines, the lockdowns, the passports. So that was a massive thing for us because no matter what your belief is on vaccines, we should have the right to bodily autonomy and the right to choose what we put in our body. So I personally didn't get a COVID vaccine. I think it's a complete death shot. But even if for people who think it's good, you should have the right to choose.
Yeah.
And Canada was clearly taking that away. People were being not allowed to go to gyms, not allowed to go to movie theaters. malls shutting down unless you have a vaccine, you've been vaccinated. So that was a big part of us leaving, was Bolsonaro was not doing that in Brazil. So we went to Brazil for about, and then 2 years in 2022, there was the election in Brazil, and the Bolsonaro, his opposition Lula, and Alexandre de Moraes, he was the head of the Supreme Court in Brazil, and they are sided super closely with the cartels and with the drug dealers, and they are also, Lula's vice president used to be a member of the Brazilian Communist Party.
Yeah.
So it is literally a communist party down there. And then, of course, there was complications with the election. A lot of people said it was stolen, which I believe also. So people began to take to the streets in peaceful protests. Everything was peaceful. In October, I forgot, 8th, I think it was, 8 million Brazilians took to the streets.
Yeah.
So it was all peaceful. They're all just there waving Brazilian flags. And then on January 8th, they actually went to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and to protest there and to protest the unlawful government that had come through. And when they came to the parliament buildings, they said that the glass was smashed. There was graffiti everywhere. And it's filmed. There are people there wearing masks and like balaclavas who went there first and then left. And then after the protesters came and said that everything was already smashed, and all of them got arrested and put in jail, a ton of solitary confinement on alleged because they were smashing it allegedly. And then Bolsonaro actually went on and told everyone, he's like, we accept the election results. We'll try again in 4 years. And he still got arrested for an alleged coup and is sentenced to 29 years in jail.
Yeah.
So that's a life sentence. He's in his late 60s.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, it sounds a lot like the same kind of corruption pattern that we see in Canada. It's just a little bit less extreme because they don't shoot the protesters here that often.
yeah.
Which is why everything he said about the freedoms being taken away is true. But my point is, it's just kind of starting now, and I'm just concerned about how far it's going to go. We're going to end up being like the UK.
Yeah.
If we don't do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So,
with the leftist, I'm not going to call them that. I'm going to call them communists straight out because that's what they were coming to power in Brazil. Some of the immediate actions that they did resemble very much what liberals are doing now.
Yeah.
Where gun bans, for example, they began taking away people's firearms. A lot of.
it always starts with the firearms getting taken away.
Get to that. People
Absolutely.
I am a massive. I do not advocate gun violence, but I believe people should own guns. It's people who are sane, lunatics shouldn't, but I think we should have the right to bear arms because in every totalitarian system, the first thing they do is disarm the people. If you look in the Soviet Union, the first thing they did was disarm everyone. They killed 100 million people. Communist China, disarmed everyone, killed 120 million people. Cambodia, they went door to door, kicked down the doors, disarmed everyone, and then they killed 1/3 to half the population.
And Venezuela, where my wife's from too, they banned the guns.
The next thing coming out of my mouth is going to be Venezuela.
Yeah.
And that's so that within a week of coming to power, that's the first thing the communists did in Brazil was began banning guns.
But I just want to say something about that because we used to be a high trust society here. I don't feel like that's happening anymore.
No.
And in a high trust society, everybody, we trust people to own guns. You're responsible. We just have a culture of responsibility, right? Like we never used to hear about the kind of violence and crimes that's happening now, especially out in Ontario, out east in Vancouver. And, it's like, and so now they're taking the guns away because they're saying all this crime's happening, but it's like, it's not us. Like the culture's changing. They're doing it to us.
Well, and people also want to call it gun violence. This last year, not a single RPAL holder, so that's a restricted possession and acquisition license, committed a single violent gun crime.
Yeah.
So banning our legally purchased firearms will not make the slightest difference.
No.
A 96, I think, for 86% of gun crimes are committed using illegally smuggled up handguns from the United States.
Yeah.
And how the Liberals respond to that is not closing down the border and sealing the border to stop these illegal weapons from coming through, but it's banning our legally purchased guns that don't make the slightest difference.
Yeah. So it's just going to demoralize us and make us submit to that. And it's not going to actually solve any of the problem. But they're just flexing their muscle because they know they can, well, they know that, you know, well, they're hoping that we're going to be pushovers.
Yeah.
But look what's happening in Alberta. Like, here's the thing, my message to gun owners. If you want to keep your guns, there's only one way, okay? And it's to leave Canada. Because once they take the guns away, you're never going to get them back. You think, oh, a future conservative government's going to flip it over and you're just going to hold on to your prohibited
There'll never
guns.
be another conservative government.
You're going to hold on to your prohibited guns for like a couple of years. And no, you know what's going to happen? Your neighbor, your ex-wife, somebody you run into, you at the bar, you say something, oh, okay, now you got your prohibited guns. The police are going to kick your door down. They're going to make an example out of you. They're going to start making examples out of people.
And guns are only the beginning. That's what I always tell people is it's not just guns.
No.
They're doing guns so that they can, because once they seize the only property you have to defend yourself, your defense. It's like what they did that in Venezuela. They took everyone's guns and then they shut up and started kicking people off their farms. They started taking their animals, and nobody can stop them.
Yeah.
So the same thing in Brazil. They banned the guns. And then immediately they banned homeschooling.
Yeah.
And they mandated vaccines. They began imprisoning people with zero proof and zero warrants or anything. They just show up, kick down the door, and imprison somebody, solitary confinement, with no judge, no trial, nothing.
Yeah.
But the first thing before any of that was banning people's guns. So that and just seeing a lot of the agendas that Lula and the communists had in Brazil line up so perfectly with the Liberals now in Canada.
Yeah.
That it's also, you realize that's exactly where, honestly, Canada would be like that if we didn't have. I think Albertans having the many guns that we have is the only reason why we're not.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't have them, I think they'd be able to take the gloves off. But the only reason why now they're moving slow is because Albertans are armed. That's my personal belief.
Yeah.
And when I saw it happen down there, it was freaking scary because they literally will show people's houses in the night and arrest them, take them out. It's like, and the people can't do anything. The people can't.
There's a lot of
think
support for
they're all
independence.
armed.
Yeah, well, no, I think you got a strong point there because if they knew that, if they knew that we didn't have guns, they would be much more bold with taking our freedoms away at this point. But man, the first step is they're going to get rid of that.
Disarming is always the first step. And people also are like, no, that's all they'll do. It's like, no, look at their agenda, what Carney has openly talked about
Control
doing.
the propaganda, the media,
Yeah,
take away the guns,
yeah,
and then the freedoms are next.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and like we've just seen a pattern of our freedoms getting eroded. This whole suite of bills that Carney's coming up with, Bill C9, Bill C22, like they want to take your data off your phone for a whole year.
Yeah.
And then what's the other one that leading to a digital ID, like you're under 16, you're going to be banned from using the internet. But then the rest of us have to put in a government ID in order to use it. Banning what you can share on certain websites, like making Facebook take our, like, I know how it actually works, right? They changed the law that the Facebook has to pay for the ads to use the news articles, but like the effect of that is that we don't share news articles.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm back. I don't know where that cut off, but you were just talking about England. You said that there's gun bans that happen there.
I have a coffee waiting for me. A coffee.
Well, let's walk back to this is the restaurant. Let's go around the corner.
All right.
Yeah. So you were talking about how there's gun bans in the UK.
Well, they did exactly what Canada has done now.
Yeah.
And if you look, crime has only gone up. Right now, crime is like triple the amount that it was when people could buy guns. Rape is up like 12%, or not 12%, 12 times what it used to be. And crazy influx of crime. It is nothing to do with the guns. The people are disarmed. And what are they doing now? They're stabbing each other. They're hacking each other apart. And people will always find a way, like people always try to blame guns for violence, but there's more homicides committed with vehicles than with guns.
Yeah.
But why aren't we screening who buys cars? For example, or like if anyone actually wants to kill somebody, they'll run a truck them, they'll get a machete. It's like there's not guns they try to outlaw, but that's not the cause of crime.
Yeah. We used to live in a high trust society, and I feel like we don't anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, Wade, it was nice chatting with you.
Thank you very much for all you do, John.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll definitely see you around a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Let's stand in the shade and talk a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you have such an interesting story, though.
Yeah.
But I think you represent, a lot of people in Alberta.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
Never seeing you again. That's not me.
Oh, yeah. We'll see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that your story needs to be heard. There's a lot of people who think just like you, and I think pretty much just like you on a lot of these issues here. And
Yeah.
but you don't see a lot of young people. That's kind of why it's interesting to see you around at all these things. Like,
Well, yeah, a lot of them, I mean, they're lazy, quite frankly. People, I don't know young guys, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll rise up, we'll do something. But they won't even come to these events. And it's like, are you really going to do anything? Or they're like, when it gets so extreme, we'll join a movement, we'll rise up, take up arms, whatever. And it's like, no, you won't. If you're not willing to be here with a flag, you're not gonna. But no, honestly, there's a lot of young people, I have tons of friends, they all support it, especially young guys, especially.
yeah.
But they just don't they work. That is something good, getting married, but also, honestly, they're lazy. And that's
Yeah, I know. There's probably a whole bunch of excuses. It's hard to get into their mind. It's hard to get into the forever Canadians' mind too. Right? Whenever I encounter one, I feel they don't have one. I feel like they're shocked at my mere existence. Like, how is it possible that someone who disagrees with me exists in this world? That's what the forever Canadians seem to be like.
yeah.
Well, they obviously can't think through and problem solve, can they?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I'm like, I don't know. My camera's, whenever it's blinking red, it's running. So I just keep an eye on that. But I feel like they haven't thought this through all the way. There's two kinds, There's the kind that are like the actual leftist Canadians who just actually like what's going on, and then there's the conservative Canadians who just haven't yet. They agree with everything we say, but they haven't yet gotten themselves to the next step.
Yeah.
I think they're not hungry enough.
Yeah.
Well, they try to hold on to some belief that, no, it can be fixed. We can hold, we can say it, salvage it.
Yeah.
But I used to, before, I was like, we can break through, somehow fix this country. But given the hordes of immigrants that have poured into the East, it's destroyed. It's completely polluted there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's honestly, so the East now, even this last election, they called the election before counting Alberta's votes because our votes were not enough. Even if every single person in Alberta voted for the Conservatives, it would have not been enough to get a Conservative Prime Minister.
So here's just a little point of fact on a definition of a democracy. We've never lived in a democracy because in a true democracy, every vote counts equal. Nobody cares if we vote or not.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, this will be the first time in Alberta's history, in Canada's history, when an Albertan's vote counted for something, right? And it'll be a big one. There's people honking at us like, this is the first time in Alberta's history, or Canada's history, when an Albertan's vote will count for something.
We have never lived in a democracy.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah. Well, no, I get what you're saying. It's like the way the system is set up is it's rigged so that the Eastern vote will always be represented more than the Western vote. We're a colony.
It could be any kind of government, though, John.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
It's the fact that there's a percentage of votes that don't count.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like the young gentleman's right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if Western Canada votes.
Yeah.
And so that, by definition,
Yeah.
cancels us the democracy.
Yeah.
Democracy is a word they throw around to keep people happy.
Yeah. But I'm optimistic. I think that the referendum and our option to leave Canada is kind of the last semblance of democracy that we have. And we'll see if we actually are allowed to go through with it. Because they might fight us tooth and nail, but what if we get a majority? Do you think that this will actually happen? I think it will.
No, I don't.
No?
I don't. Not as long as Danielle's in there.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a binding vote.
But like the next one would be. Yeah.
Well, if she lets it happen, maybe she'll just kick it down the road till we're all old and dead.
Which she very well could. She could just say, "Hey, you got a majority for this referendum, but actually I'm not going to do anything about it."
Right? How she's done that with the Alberta pension plan.
Yeah.
She's done that with the Alberta police force. She's done that with all kinds of the
Equalization.
balanced budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has done nothing except yak.
Yeah.
That will continue. Past performance predicts future behavior.
So then what are our options in that case when she says, "You got a majority on this referendum to have a referendum, but I'm just going to ignore you"?
We got to get her out.
Yeah, that wouldn't go well.
Wouldn't go well?
No. The Albertans would just turf her. I mean, the whole party would be gone.
Well, yeah, so we turf her, let's say 60%, 70% of the UCP base turfs her. But that other 30%, they jump over to the Lukasik kind of liberal conservative motto he's going to create.
I got more faith in Alberta than that.
You do?
Yeah, we're conservative through the bone.
Yeah.
If you're working under that premise, you're working under fear.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get out from under.
Yeah.
Is people ruling by fear.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Somebody else will show up. Christ, there's another bus will come along. They always do.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean,
She thinks she's special. She was, but she's not.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. I'm very disappointed. I'm very hurt. And I'm very sad.
I'm so disappointed in Danielle Smith. Like, she always seemed like the libertarian. She actually seemed more libertarian than I would even want to be.
Somebody's either paid her or
Yeah.
threatened her or both.
Yeah.
But she's definitely abandoned ship.
I agree.
Right?
Especially when she goes from saying, "Hey, if the government has to pay for a pipeline, then the exercise failed," or whatever.
Yeah.
And now she's jumping in on this. Like, what the hell? Like, they got to her.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of money there. I don't know if somebody got to her. It's just a matter of she's trying to make it look good, like we might get a pipeline.
Yeah.
What irritates me is in a public forum with Carney, why doesn't she say to her, get rid of this climate stuff because that's not going to go. Nobody's paying for it, and get rid of the public option because the taxpayers can't afford that.
Yeah.
Just say that in public to Carney.
Yeah.
you know what, sir? This is the sad part. And I so appreciate your thoughts because I think you're spot on. But between the AI centers that are, and between buying a pipeline to the West Coast and committing us to this carbon capture crap, she's already committed almost $1 trillion of our tax dollars and has asked nobody.
Yeah, but it hasn't happened, and I got a feeling it's not going to happen. But I'm just hoping the money doesn't go out first.
Why isn't she balancing a budget
Yeah.
instead of yapping about AI centers and carbon capture?
Exactly.
Right?
Hey, there's another thing I want
Why
to
is
talk
she
about.
on all of that?
It's the trucking industry.
Yeah.
I drove truck for 50 years from coast to coast.
Yeah.
And you should have seen all the accidents. Most of them all new Canadians.
Yeah.
They don't have experience of driving a semi.
Yeah.
The last place I was at, before I had to retire, had no choice, because one cut me off in Kamloops,
Yeah.
and I had to have my hip replaced, 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
And then the truckers there at Apps Cargo, they couldn't even back a trailer into the dock to get loaded.
Yeah.
They had to have someone else to back it in for them.
Yeah, I have a Class 1 license, and I drove a tank truck for several years. And I've talked about this on a couple of my videos. An immigrant who came here 30 years ago, or 35 years ago, been a Class 1 driver. He's Latino. He said he went to Vancouver, and he couldn't get hired because the trucking companies were either Somali or East Indian, and they would only hire their own. And this is like, he said it on my video. I'm just repeating what he said. And like, I talked to a Somali guy one time who told me the same story. He's like, we only hire our own, right? And he's like, I went to a Somali-run school, and then they put me behind the wheel the very next day and sent me to the United States. A guy said that to me. So, yeah.
Go home if you just hire your own. We don't need you here.
Yeah. Well, it's illegal in Canada to do that, but when you see companies that are like all of one ethnicity, you're like, only your ethnicity applied here and nobody else did?
For the Prime Minister to be involved in 128 different conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
What's happened there?
Yeah. So then I guess my real question is like, how much more corruption do we need to see before people actually wake up? Like all of us, we crossed the line. It crossed the line for us. But what about these conservatives who are like UCP? They agree with everything we're saying, but they won't take it to the next step. What do we say to them? Because that's how we win. We get the 60%, you know, or sorry, 6% of the province vote as UCP. We get that group, we win. How do we get them?
They just got to keep going to the grocery store.
Hey, turn around, take their money away.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Take their money away
Yeah.
and give them the money that we live on and see if they can afford it.
Well, no, I get that, but I'm thinking that's what we would say to these illegal immigrants and stuff. But what about the conservatives who they support everything that we're talking about here? They're just as pissed off as the rest of us, but they won't take that next step to become independent supporters.
Well, these pipeline deals are going to force that.
You think
Because
so?
it's all taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And people are going to go, what the heck? And what I want to say about going back to the carbon stuff is Canada in general and Alberta specifically, we're carbon sinks. We should be sending bills to the world with our forests. We absorb more carbon than anybody else. So why are we putting in stuff like this carbon machine that Carney wants to build? Will never happen. And it's a waste of money.
Well, it's like my grandfather turned around and told me when I was young, we were born free because you don't pay taxes when you're first born
Yeah.
until you start work. Then you're taxed to death.
Yeah.
You even got a death tax when you pass away.
And taxes were a
So
temporary
but like so many people agree with us on all these issues, but they still will go with Canada just because of nostalgia or just because they and here's another, they don't think we're gonna win, you know, and they won't be
There tends to be
principled.
some fear. Like for me personally, I think you have to convince you have to talk to them one-on-one. Like events are good, but I was a canvasser and I had personally convinced a lot of people to sign because they're like, no, I'm not pro. And you ask, okay, why aren't you? You listen to them, get them to explain it, and then you break it down for them. Okay, you're scared about your pension, you're scared about this, because people always have some reason. Either the conservatives, like they share the same values, but there's something always holding them back, and you have to talk to them, like, figure it out. And I'd say that's a huge thing, is having that conversation with people to figure it out. Like,
I turned around last weekend. The girl, the wife and I, we went shopping at the Walmart.
Yeah.
We parked in the parking lot. When we got our groceries coming back, two young guys come up to talk to me
Yeah.
because they seen my shirt.
Yeah.
And they're interested. They said they're going to vote for independence in
Yeah.
October.
Yeah. Well, and so it's good. I think we're making some headway here. I feel like there's a large group of people who agree with everything we're saying right up into the end, and I don't understand. I don't understand that, because for me the line was crossed. Like, actually, tell us. I'll share with you. My line was crossed when I'm like, I support independence. During COVID, toward the end, when I saw that Indigenous elderly lady get trampled by the RCMP on horseback in front of Parliament.
the same thing.
That symbolic moment is etched into my mind. That's when the line crossed. I'm like, there's no hope for Canada. So, like, I don't know. Do you guys have a line like that?
Yeah.
When was your line?
My line was in the 70s because the small town I grew up in, there was oil activity all along the foothills.
Yeah.
Our town would almost double in size on weekends. And some of my buddies used to work for the seismic crews.
Yeah.
And then I say Satan ended it, Satan being Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah.
And ever since then, just you could see the hard line that they had for Alberta and our industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, ever since the 70s, I've been waiting for a movement to get this big.
Yeah.
And I'm just all in. And I think you're going to see a lot more, especially over the next few months. You're going to see a lot more happening. I think you're going to see a lot more people in conversations like this. Because like I say, I go back to the 70s and I hear some, like you were talking about COVID, I've heard somebody talk about the floor crossers were their red line. I'm going, well, it's about time, but welcome.
Yeah.
Same with me back in the 1960s,
Yeah.
because I just turned 69, 2nd of June.
Yeah.
Next year I'll be 70.
Yeah. So, like, the National Energy Program, Pierre Trudeau, that was your line. You became an independent supporter back then.
Oh, well, I was waiting for a.
Yeah.
We knew that we couldn't keep going the way we were going with Trudeau, with the taxes and the limitations we had.
Yeah.
And everything we tried to do. Ralph Klein tried to introduce public-private partnerships with hospitalization, with healthcare, saying you go through the public system and you can't get help, then they would figure it out in the private system. Chrétien was the prime minister at that time, and he said, well, then you won't get transfer payments. In a normal world, that's called extortion.
Well, it got worse.
What was your line?
COVID, or the Freedom Trucker, the Truckers Convoy, I'd say seeing the results. It's very similar to you, time frame where I always tried, I would always try to hold on to the idea, we can fix Canada, we'll get a conservative, and quite often signs would be so dismal, like, how can we? But honestly, seeing that, how they treated people there, trampling, or bullets, the tear gas, everything, I was like, we're lost. So when I told my friend, I was like, this is a communist state. By the time it gets to that point, and that's pretty much what I decided, like,
Well, so this is before your time, kind of right before my time, actually, but we tried with the Reform Party, right, to fix Canada, right?
It goes back to, and I try to promote Kathy Flett's presentation in Bonnyville in November. Because it goes through, and she has the graphics there. She does the same talk, but in that one in Bonnyville, she has the charts that shows you the money, it shows you the Constitution limitations that we have. And they never taught us that Alberta was colonized when I was a kid in school. I'm old, but I don't remember it. And same with Alberta and Saskatchewan being colonized, and it wasn't until the 1905 Alberta Act and the Saskatchewan Act. And they don't teach us that in school. And learning that now is kind of like, okay, that's the hammer, that's the nail in the coffin kind of thing, where you just get, what the heck is happening?
Well, you'd think the seniors would know more, because of how it's changed since they grew up. How it's got worse.
I was talking to a senior who he was complaining all about the National Energy Project and all these things that we're saying here, and he told me to my face, he's on my video, share a link below. He was like, I'm actually going to vote for Carney now. This is a guy in my video. He said he was conservative. He basically repeated almost everything that we talk about, not so much about COVID. That wasn't a thing that he really talked about. But and then at the end, he's like, you know what? Carney's actually doing a good job, and he drank the Kool-Aid.
What has Carney done? Exactly what has Carney done?
He spent a lot of money on trips, on food.
But okay, but like backing all up here, and you touched on a point earlier on. I kind of want to just go back to that. You were like, freedom, right? All of these little issues that we talk about, they're huge issues. Pipelines and, all these are corruption in the government, Carney's $250 butter. It's like, okay, really the issue is freedom. For me, I want freedom.
Exactly.
Same here. Same here.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we got it, and I feel like it's getting worse.
And, people they'll plan equalization payments, pipelines. Those are big deals, don't get me wrong. But that's not actually why I'm out here. I'm out here is because my freedom is being taken away, and that's why I'm standing up for. I'm not out here protesting for pipelines. It's freedom. At the end of the day, that's all we are fighting for is freedom.
Well, I can't.
To add to what you're talking about, freedom is, I lived and worked legally in the States for over a decade. One, I learned a lot. One is states' autonomy. I mean, each state, they could have done 50 different things for COVID because each state has their own rules and regulations.
And they did.
And the freedom is a lot more significant. They're trying to take it away when you get these liberals in Congress and stuff. But living there and seeing it live, I worked from San Francisco or Sacramento to Fort Lauderdale, from St. Louis to Texas, Colorado, Wisconsin, Ohio. And I learned a lot. And that's the biggest thing I learned in the differences. I had this guy, a foreigner, ask us a question about being from Canada. You must see a lot of similarities. And it's the state's autonomy is huge difference.
Well, and that's kind of the solution is like government closer to the people. Right, small government, more focused, closer to the people. This is the problem I have with Ottawa. Is they're 3,000 some kilometers away from us, and they're completely different from us. There's like 6 different regions in between. They don't represent us. They don't have the same values and dreams and perspective on the world, or the same culture, and because of that, they try to impose their views on us, and so.
I can't even work. I can't even afford to go on a holiday. I can't afford to even leave Alberta right now. That's how bad it is for me, for us. If it wasn't for the wife with me, I'd be living in my pickup.
And I'm sorry to hear that, And I feel like honestly, I'm not doing that well either. I have to work. I pretty much work hand to mouth, And I feel like, I look at, well, even your generation, the average age when I bought my first house was like 22. And I bought a house around that time. And then now the average age is like 45 in Canada.
And it's gone to the point where I've honestly decided I'm not going to buy a house.
Yeah.
I want to buy rural farmland and build my own house. It's the only way I can do it without going into like $2 million of debt.
Yeah.
And everyone else start going, I'm going to save up for 10 years and then I'll get $1 million mortgage they'll pay off by the time I'm 60. And it's like, yeah, no thanks. Never really wanted that kind of slavery.
Yeah. And it's like, meanwhile, we're just letting millions and millions of people come here. And I mean, I say this with a bit of caution, right? Because I sponsored my wife to come to Canada, but like I'm living with her in the same house. Like it's not taking a house away from the rental market. She is, yeah. And she's, I'm assimilating her, right? But it's like, she lives in my house. And so how about all these millions of people that are just showing up here? Where the heck are they going? Like I honestly wonder that, because it seems like the last 5 years, we've just seen so many of them come. Where did all the people who were living in those houses before go? Are they all in their pickup trucks now?
Some of them are.
I think a lot of them are.
16 people in a basement.
I think a lot of them are.
Well,
it's sad. It's tragic.
I drove with semi for 50 years. I helped the whole country.
Yeah.
Delivering food.
Yeah.
Without semis, we have nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I get some help once in a while, but not very much anymore.
Yeah.
But I've helped people out for over 50 years.
Yeah. Well, I need to wind this video down here a little bit. It's been a good conversation with you guys. It was so nice to talk to you again. Hey, I keep seeing you around. What's your name again?
Gerald.
Gerald. Keep seeing you around. What was your name again?
Kevin.
Kevin.
I got more challenge coins. I'll have
give
them
you
inside.
one of these.
Okay.
So you remember my name.
I will.
But I've used that.
And then thank you so much,
seeing you.
Dennis. Dennis, right?
Daniel.
Daniel. Thanks so much, Steve. It's like 15 times you got to tell me the name. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I have conversations with Albertans. I care about this topic. I care about the future of this province. Please go and donate. Please volunteer. I'm going to leave some links below. Check them out, how you can get involved in this movement. Cheers.